All right, so what did professional development look like for you throughout your teaching career? Specifically, what personally did you do to keep growing as a teacher?
Okay, well, let's go back when I was a teacher. Once I had finished university, the first year of teaching, in Britain it was, you had HMI inspectors of every subject area, an advisor. And so when you first started, you had to do what was called a main professional year, which is like pass, like, you know, you're a good qualified teacher to get your permanent contract. And part of that is they had regular PD sessions every sort of 4 months, and you had to select things that you wanted to work on. So I worked on dance, was one area, and then the other one was rugby, because there was touch rugby had just been really pushed, and actually TGFU was part of that, Teaching Games Understanding, part of that initiative. So they were the first sort of, you selected and they were arranged in the district, and then you went to where you felt was the most beneficial as a new teacher. And that necessarily didn't always be subject area, it could be other things like use of technology, and as a new curriculum came out, it was different ways of doing assessment. So all those things were happening in Britain at that time. And so I liked that because it was also getting into a community, I was meeting people, right? And so when you start teaching out, you want to find who are the other PE teachers, who are the other people who are interested in similar areas, and then you make networks after the PD sessions. So you turned up, that got you together, but then you started collaborating. So that was the bit that I think was the real PD, is when you have a way of connecting with other professionals who are interested in similar things. So that was way back in the 1980s. So then if you step into my career going into universities, then I came to Canada, and then I was teaching at university. So then PD changes, because you're teaching classes for undergrads and you're learning on the job. So I was a PE teacher, suddenly I've got to teach elementary phys ed teachers how to teach phys ed. I've got to teach a tennis course to people who are different levels of players, and they're adults, but their demands are different at universities. So that PD was more informal, and what I did is I would go and someone else's class that was similar to mine and attend.
Yeah.
And then after class I would talk to them, and when I learned the elementary phys ed, basically with a woman called Sally Carline, I've got her textbook up there, and I was in her class in the morning from like 9 to 10:30, and then at 1 to 2:30 I taught the same lesson. So my first time, because it was overwhelming teaching elementary phys ed, I'm a secondary PE teacher, I didn't really know in hands-on, but because she taught where she had kids in, and I just like, this is marvellous. So I was learning how to teach small children, applying the ideas as a phys ed senior teacher, and then in the afternoon adapting her ideas, and then by reteaching it, really learning it.
Yeah.
So I did that for like 2 terms, and it was so good that I did my master's on how she was teaching, because she was doing things like creative dance and educational gymnastics with children, and then I wanted to find out how university students who hadn't been teachers were understanding that, because I realized I was learning way more than they were.
Yeah.
Because I appreciated why what she was doing was right, having had taught kids.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of the university students were resisting sometimes what she was saying, because it was so different to what they had experienced as kids in school, and they were very focused on getting high marks. So because she was a person who had high standards, it caused down that, I call it the hidden curriculum, because what was going on is they were resisting sometimes the messages because they weren't scoring high marks in the class. And I was like, what's going on here? The ideas are so good. And what I realised is they just didn't have enough experience with children to appreciate what she was doing and why it was so effective. So that was another form of PD. You sort of create an awareness of what are the issues that you need to address, and if someone offers you insight, then you grab hold of that. And then the third level was when I was then teaching as a grad student seminar classes where you're preparing people to learn in the field, like you're doing your 498 type class. And that, what they did at U of A, University of Alberta, was they had cohorts of people that would meet on a Friday, and we would plan as a cohort what was going to happen the following week. And that was amazing, because you'd have people who were like 55, 60 coming back doing their masters, who were just retiring but doing a masters, new people like me who were like 24, 25, starting out, people mid-career who were doing a PhD, and we all would meet, and then really, what are we going to do next week to help people learn how to become teachers as they go into school? And that was amazing PD, because it was a richness of prior experience, trying to understand how do you develop teacher identity, and what is that teacher identity, and what experiences do you need to give them. So then that PD I found very inspiring, because when you become a social group, you change stuff, right? Because we're not going to do that anyway, we're going to do this. So as a group, once you get an agreement, you actually can influence a whole program, and that model is then what I've brought here. Is I've tried to work what you call professional learning communities, is where people come with a similar interest, and so then that's my next level of PD, is really getting people who are interested in a project working together towards causing change, and then learning in the moment. Like, you don't know what you're going to do next, but you have a philosophy that's bringing people together. And then the other element of PD would be when you go to conferences, attending sessions that often reflect that philosophy. So I would go to sessions that are talking about the same learning community and how that starts to influence people's practice. And there's things like I call self-study, where what I've done with you guys in your class is you try to, I'm talking about this, am I living what I talk? So a self-study is you try to say, okay, these are the principles I'm trying to teach my students, am I actually following those principles in my own practice? And then to do that, you need to be working with other people who are then listening to how you are enacting your own philosophy, right? So that's a third final sort of PD.
Perfect. So is there a specific method of professional development you found most effective or motivating?
The one that's a collective group would be when people come with a common interest. It's like our complexity theory, right? If you all attract to the same thing, then it starts to self-organize. And I don't like a one where there's somebody who's trying to be in charge, but I'm also being aware that I'm often put in that position, so then I try to decentralize, right? And so my PD is then learning how to decentralize from being at the center, while I still have responsibility for the group moving forward. So that's a different way of understanding PD. And so I'd go to conferences and workshops, and I find now that unless the person is offering that type of model in the way their approach is being advocated, I pretty much switch off, because they're trying to tell me rather than engage in, so what's your reality? Okay, how does that connect to that person's reality? Oh, that's a great idea. So you're drawing from the group rather than this is how you should do it. Because I don't believe in any universal rights. There are principles, but how we understand those are complex, so we have to work through different challenges to come to understand those. So those I select those sessions then when I go to conferences, and that would be another PD. But it's the collective, I think, the collective awareness.
So do you have any advice for the class of 2014 as to what we can start doing right away to professionally develop ourselves?
Make really good e-portfolios and share them. Because that's actually, I'm realizing as I'm working with your other colleagues, holy moly, if you get that out there, people are finding me, right? They then connect you. I've done 4 keynote presentations around the world, and it's not from tons of publications, it's my website. I've done creative dance in South Korea. They paid the whole way for me out there, paid me money and they were all professional dancers I was presenting to, but they want to know how to teach kids creative dance. So, and that because I had a website where there's lots of creative dance resources that students had created. So, and that was great PD, because then you have a conversation in a second language with people who love movement to music, but want to understand how you teach it to kids when they have a professional idea of dance, just like an elite sport player. And I've done in Australia about teaching games, complexity theory. All that has come from people seeing things on a website that now is becoming my portfolio. So it's almost a way of helping people find you, or you finding them, and then making links. Because I think less and less it's going to be going to a place, and it's more your tweet, through tweets you're connecting up, and then you're having hangouts online, and you're networking and sharing video of ideas. That's your generation. That's different to mine.
Sounds good. Perfect.
There you go.
Well, that's everything. Thanks, Tim.